everybody. As you can see, I'm not the news anchor. I'm one of the news anchors at DW News. That's Laila Harak, one of our anchors who broadcasts mainly to Africa. Yeah, thank you very much for inviting me here. There are a lot of you here. I understand some of you are public relations students, some of you are journalism students, and we even maybe have some future diplomats amongst us. I'm not so sure about that. Oh, and also thank you. You should have told me that Justin Bieber was coming to me. Right, journalism and freedom. Okay, this little bit, I'm going to try and keep it short. It's a little bit serious. I've always felt that journalism and freedom are very closely linked. You know, we journalists, we tend to defend freedom. We find ourselves praising freedom. We find ourselves demanding freedom. DW at the moment. By the way, Deutsche Welle stands for German wave, as in radio wave. It started off as a radio station in 1965. That's why it's called Deutsche Welle, German wave. But these days we just make it easy on everybody, so you can just say DW. Anyway, DW at the moment is involved in a campaign to secure the freedom of a Saudi Arabian blogger. His name is Raif Badawi. And he used to be a journalist in Saudi Arabia, but the authorities didn't like what he was writing, so they stopped him working as a journalist. They set up a website, sort of a discussion forum about, you know, social issues in Saudi Arabia, about things like discussing how Saudi Arabia could reform itself, become more modern. And so they put him in prison. He's been sentenced to 10 years in prison. He's been sentenced to being whipped in public. That happened last year. And DW is very committed to securing his freedom. So, as I say, journalism and freedom very much related to each other. And on a more sort of personal level, I've always felt that journalism gives you, as an individual, as a professional, an enormous amount of freedom. You can, if you put an idea in your mind, you decide, I want to do a report on that, or on that place, or on that person. And if you are persistent enough, you can do it. You can just make that dream come true. You'll understand a little bit more about that in a second. And the other thing that I really like about journalism and links it to freedom is you have the freedom as a journalist to ask a question of anybody. If you want to ask President Obama or Jokowi a question and you really set your mind on it, it's your job to do that. You have the freedom to do that, to go and find someone and stand in front of them and ask them a question. Okay, so that's another thing about freedom. Right, and actually, sorry that this is so small, but this is a little example. I used to do some work in Namibia, in southern Africa, with training community journalists, and this lady here, her name is Morley Hlongwane, and she did exactly that. She decided that the German president was visiting Namibia for 25 years of German-Namibian relations, and the project that we were involved in was being showcased at a sort of a little trade fair with lots of other German projects. And the German president was walking around with his bodyguards, and she just picked up a microphone and a recorder, and she burst through the bodyguards and just started talking to the president. Whoops. There we go. Hit the wrong button. And this is the thing. I simply told myself I'm going to get this interview. So that's a real freedom that I think on an individual level as a journalist you have. Enough about freedom. It's going to be very simple this evening. I just want to tell you the story of 3 stories that I've done and give you an idea what that has taught me about journalism. I'm going to tell you about my first radio story, then move on to something that I call the story behind the story, which has always been very important to me, and then the story I travel longest for. So my first radio story, I want to ask you a question first. You're all journalism students, or at least some of you. Have you ever seen one of these? Anybody? What do you know what it is? It's a recorder, okay. Do you know what kind of recorder it is? Tape recorder, yeah, it's 1/4-inch tape, but not the kind of tape recorder that we think of, like a Sony, what was it called? Tape recorders are so, well, this is very old school. This is the first tape recorder I used. It's called a Nagra, which is a French company. You probably remember the Nagras. And it weighs 3.5 kilos. It felt like 6 kilos on my shoulder. And I was a journalism student, just like you guys, in Paris. And there was something called the Virgin Record Store, which makes me really old school. We used to buy records back then. I know you guys don't even buy CDs today. But anyway, there was this big Virgin Record Store in the middle of Paris. And it was very controversial because it was opening on a Sunday. France is a Catholic country. It was banned to shop on a Sunday, and there was a big social debate. The politicians were all criticizing Virgin. And I had an interview with the head of Virgin, kind of an intimidating guy, very senior. And here was I, a little journalism student, going to get an interview with him. And I came away from that interview thinking, well, his arguments were pretty good, and I was carrying this, and it felt a bit like this guy. I felt that I had this weight on my shoulders. I got this interview on tape and all his words and his arguments, and I felt suddenly the weight of responsibility to do justice to what he had been telling me. Obviously, only one side of the story, but an important part, a very criticized part in a controversial debate. And I just want to give you that idea that yes, we have freedom to make our dreams as a journalist come true, and we have the freedom to ask questions of anybody, but that freedom comes with responsibility, which looks roughly like that. Okay, so that's the first story. Now the story behind the story, let me just diverge for a second. DW has a relatively new program called The Day, which is presented by this guy, this guy here, Brent Goff, and Sarah Kelly, and myself. And essentially, The Day looks back at the top stories of the day, and it's not about summarizing them, it's about digging deeper, about looking at the background of the stories, about finding the story behind the story and helping our viewers understand a particular story. So anyway, I just needed to get that in, one of our new programs. Now the story behind the story that I want to tell you about is about these guys here. Anybody recognize what sort of people these are? Okay, we have neo-Nazis, any other? Skinheads, okay. These are indeed skinheads. And in the early 1990s in Germany, Germany had just reunified from communist East Germany and capitalist West Germany into one country. And there were, we kind of discovered in communist East Germany that there were a lot of people who had racist feelings. And a lot of them looked a little bit like this charming gentleman here. And we had a lot of refugees coming into Germany because there were some wars in former Yugoslavia, so we had refugees coming in from Bosnia, from Croatia, and so on. And these guys here, they demonstrated, there were lots of riots in East Germany, and a lot of the riots were driven by these racist skinheads. Now, while I was covering this story, I came across a different type of skinhead. And if you see, sorry, I'm getting in the way here. If you see, he has something on his jacket right there. Has anybody come across this symbol? Anybody know Skinheads Against Racial Prejudice? I suddenly saw this and you've heard about sharpskins? Okay, well, I got very interested about this, and I wrote an article for The Face, which was a youth magazine in London at the time, about sharpskins, and they completely overturned my assumptions about skinheads. I thought they were all racist, all violent, and generally not very interesting or pleasant human beings. Well, it turns out that these sharpskins were completely different. They're usually left-wing, they're against racial prejudice, and they also help me understand the origins of the skinhead movement. Does anybody know where the skinhead haircut comes from? Nobody? In the late 1960s, we had a wave of immigration to Britain from the West Indies, from the Caribbean, black people. Okay, and in the East End of London, you had mixed street gangs with young black guys and young white guys. And the black guys, you know, the West Indians, they have very, very curly hair, so they would cut their hair very, very short. And the white guys thought, that's pretty cool. I'm going to do the same. So they shaved their heads. That's where skinhead, the skinhead, original skinhead style originated from. And they would listen to this kind of music, ska music, which comes from the West Indies. Reggae, ska. Again, I'm going to reveal that I'm old school. You probably wouldn't have heard of Madness or Specials, but those were bands at the time. And they published their music on a label called Two-Tone. Two-tone meaning two colors, and the symbol was a square, which was divided in the middle. One side was white and one side was black. So the origin of the skinhead movement was actually multiracial and multicultural. And I had no idea. And this story, for me, symbolizes the story behind the story, which is often very, very interesting to find out about. Right, now just to drive that point home, I want to show you this film, and we're going to stop it twice, and I'm going to tell you when. So could you play it? Could you start it? What do you see? Anybody? Man running? What else? A woman? Okay, but tell me more about the man running. What kind of person is it? Skinhead, fugitive. Okay, so he's running away from something. Okay? Let's start the film again. Okay, what more do we know? Come again? He's stealing something. Okay. Right. Now I'm just going to show you the rest of the film. Okay, that's a famous advert. You can, because there's another little bit that comes up. Just keep it going. The Guardian. The Guardian newspaper produced this advert in 1986. It's called the Points of View advert. And it really symbolizes how you have a particular, if you have a particular point of view on something, you think he's a fugitive. He's done something bad, he ran away, he's running away. And the next bit you think, he's beating up a guy or he's taking his bag. And it's only when you get all the points of view that you understand what's really happening. So, that point is done. Right, last story I want to tell you about is the story that I traveled the longest for. These people here are the reindeer people of Mongolia. They're called the Tsatan. In 1998, which is a long time ago, I got a scholarship, a journalism scholarship to travel to Mongolia. I spent 8 weeks there. And while I was researching Mongolia, I came across an article about these people, and I thought it was absolutely fascinating. They're the smallest minority in Mongolia. They're very poor. They live in very rugged conditions. And I'm coming back to the idea of journalism as a dream. I suddenly had this dream of going to see the Tsatan and making a short film, short TV report about them. It took weeks of organization. I didn't really have enough money to get there. I had to negotiate with a local camera woman. It was really quite an expedition. There is Ulaanbaatar, which is the capital of Mongolia, and we had to go all the way up here to Khobsgul, which is the northernmost province of Mongolia. It took 3 days of driving to get there. Not many roads in Mongolia, so most of it was cross-country. Then when we got to this place here, we had to negotiate with the Tsartan to get horses. Then we went 3,000 meters up into the mountains, and I could do my report. Took 9 days in all. But it was a fantastic experience. I'll never forget it. I'm still telling stories about it today. And really, journalism gives you this freedom to have a dream, and then if you're persistent and you keep on working at it, you can make that dream come true. Right, I'm going to show you the report, so you can see this is my dream that came true.
They are one of the world's smallest ethnic minorities, and their way of life is under threat. The reindeer people of Mongolia, known as the Tsartan, eke out a living in some of the most inhospitable terrain imaginable. Roaming with their animals in the mountains north of Mongolia, the Tsartan have been left to fend for themselves since the collapse of communism. There are just 52 nomadic families left, and Deutsche Welle's Christopher Springate made the long journey to find them.
Khobsgul, Mongolia's northernmost province. It's in these mountains that the Tsartan live. This is one of the country's remotest regions, a 1,000-kilometer drive from the capital Ulaanbaatar, mostly in terrible conditions. Eventually, you have to exchange 4 wheels for 4 legs. Finally, at Tsartan settlement, 3,000 meters up, in winter temperatures go down to minus 50 degrees Celsius. Only here can the reindeer herdsmen find the right vegetation for their animals. Since 1985, German vet Werner Teinert has been making the trip here. Under Communist East Germany's development aid program, he helped beat off a virus that threatened the Tsartan's entire flock. Whenever he's here, the Tsartan take advantage of his expertise, and they desperately need outside help. The reindeer are under threat, amongst other things from parasites that cause dramatic weight loss. Any threat to the reindeer is a threat to the Tsartan too. Especially in winter, they depend almost entirely on their milk products. But Mongolia's new market economy is making life difficult. The communists that ruled until 1990 subsidized the Tsartan into dependency. Now they're on their own.
In our country's markets, prices are rising, and for us few reindeer people who are living in the taiga, depending on our reindeer, money is very difficult to come by. Our situation is getting worse. We're short of clothes and all sorts of other goods. We're becoming very poor.
One source of income is the trade in reindeer antlers. Both the pharmaceutical and the Chinese traditional medicine industries pay good money for a pair of antlers, but the painful process of sawing them off severely impairs the immune system. Many die as a result. Their genetic pool is getting dangerously small.
Since 1985, no fresh reindeer blood has been introduced to the Tsartan's herds. You can see that just by looking at the size and at the condition of the animals. Crossbreeding with fresh, healthy animals is an absolute necessity.
8 years ago there were 2,000, today just 600 animals are left. Any fewer and the reindeer will slowly die out.
Since Mongolia ditched communism in 1990, there has been some aid for the Tsartan, mainly from abroad. But there's so far been no concerted effort to provide them with a sustainable basis for survival. Some of the initiative will have to come from the Tsartan themselves. But if nothing is done, and the stock of reindeer falls any further, one of Asia's last true nomadic cultures may soon be extinct.
A look at financial news now.
Okay, one of my colleagues here kindly pointed out that I looked a lot younger then. Yeah, that was 1999, quite a long time. So just to summarize very quickly, my first radio story gave me this sense of responsibility when you go and interview someone or several people, the responsibility you have to do justice to what they're saying. The second story I talked about, it's the story behind the story, digging deeper. overturning your own assumptions about a particular issue. And this last story, you know, it's just, it's not actually that good a report, but it represents to me the possibility of, as a journalist, you have this freedom to just seize on an issue, on a story, and go and do it. So I wish you all the best of luck to do just that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kristen.